Hello, my name is Kristina Nylander, and I'm here to talk to you about my latest project here at Vision Tech. For my latest project, I did a two-part project. I wrote a song, and I recorded it and put it into a program called Logic, which is a sound editing program. And that song was called Heaven and Hell. And for my second part of the project, I did a Photoshop project, and I did the album artwork for that song. So this is the image that is the final product of my work in Photoshop. I used Photoshop CS5. I'm going to go through and show you a little bit of how I did that in the program and why I did the things that I did. This was the first image that I worked with, and this is the original picture that I used. So if you put them side by side, you can see the difference. It's quite a bit different. Okay, so when I first dropped the picture into Photoshop, I knew that I wanted it to be black and white so that the contrast was really high. So I went in and I changed the color settings a little bit and I upped the contrast. And then I decided that it didn't pop enough. So I came here and I found these three tools. First, I used the dodge tool, which is a tool that pretty much whites out or lightens the color of anything that you put over it, and I whited out all of the features on my face. And I went in and I added all of the shading and the distortion on my collarbones and my hands and my face that's dark with the burn tool. And the burn tool made it darker. It was a gradual darker. So it took a while to go through and get the really, really dark areas really dark and the other areas the right value that I needed them to be. So after I changed the color, I decided that that wasn't going to be enough. I wanted to distort it just a little bit more than that. And that's where I used these set of tools. This tool right here, that's up right now, is called the Smudge Tool. And I use the Smudge Tool to go in and smudge my face in so that it looks more sullen and sunken in, because I wanted it to look really, really scary, like you're being possessed. And I went through and I smudged my hair, and I was actually wearing a shirt in this picture, so I smudged away the shirt and, I smudged the burns that I put on myself the way that I wanted them. And that's how I got the distortion in my nose and my mouth and all of that different kind of stuff. The only part of me that you can see in this picture that's left normal is this last eye. And I just thought that it would be creepy if, you're looking at someone and that was the last part of them that was transforming into this evil being. It was their eye, because you can see the fear. Besides the smudge tool, I used the blur tool. I didn't use the sharpen tool very much because I didn't want it to look really streamlined. I wanted it to look really eerie and gross and stuff, and I didn't think that making it sharper would help. But I used the blur tool a lot. And I went in, and after I used the smudge tool, I blurred through my hair. And the other main thing that I used the blur tool was all of the little veins and lines that you see on my hands and on my chest and neck and on my face. What I did for those was I came in and I used a combination of the brush, pencil, and color replacement tool. And I kicked the size down to 1 pixel, and I went through and I drew them. But they stood out so much, and it didn't look like it was actually part of the face. It looked like it was drawn on there. And I wanted it to look more real, so I went over each specific line with the blur tool, and it worked out pretty well. And I also used the pen tool and stuff to, draw darker shapes in my eyes, as you can see here. And then the white in my eye here, I used a little bit of distortion, but I used the brush tools. So that's basically what I did. Overall, this picture, I wanted it to be really, really detailed to contrast heaven, which you'll see in a second. Heaven is very, very simplistic and soft and streamlined, and I thought that was really important, that there was as high of a contrast within the images as I could possibly make. So that's the basis for what I did with my hell picture. This is my heaven picture, and if you want to see the original picture for that, it's right here. So you can kind of see the difference there. There's obviously a huge color difference, and if you look really closely, my eye here is just a little bit longer than it is here, and also my nose is a different shape. My nose really isn't that perfect. And also my bone structure is different. It goes in and it actually has a nice little heart-shaped curve, and here that's not the case. I did all of that with Photoshop. Again, I used the smudge tool to smudge my face into place and pull it and push it where I needed to. I used the smudge tool and the blur tool on my hair, and I made sure to blur everything a lot this time because I wanted heaven to look as soft as I possibly could make it look. Just like I did in the hell picture I went through with the dodge tool, and I whited out most of the parts of my face so that I could add my own shading in there. So I did that, and then I put a gradient overlay on my background layer, and that's where you start seeing the yellow glow. I put it, actually, it's in like a wavelength format, so it doesn't cover my entire body, my entire face. It just covers the different spots that I wanted it to cover, so that you could still see like some whites in my face and the white that was in the robe that I was wearing when I took the picture. So overall, the final product looked like this. There was a pretty high contrast with how simplistic this was and how hellacious this was. And I just added some text in there with a little bit of embellishments to finalize it and make it look nice and clean and streamlined. When I put these two images together, I used the blur and the smudge tool to kind of integrate the color there. I thought that it shouldn't look exactly perfect because I just didn't want it to be that way. It was my artistic opinion. So this is a representation of my song. In my song, the beginning is very airy and lighthearted and hopeful, and the end is very dark and daunting, and that's what I wanted to portray in my image. I wanted a picture of my song, and so that's what I created. Thanks for listening, and for all of you guys out there who are using Photoshop, use the smudge tool. It's your best friend, I promise.